finesse us there. I'm putting Dieter in Grievous down.
I mean, they have buried him. Like...
Imperials. He's gonna kill everyone.
Well,
It's gonna be suicidal.
Yeah, but killing Imperials is...
Imperials are Jews. They are.
You are a Jew.
Zionist!
The neo-Zionist imperial agenda.
my God, I am going to get kicked out of the team for this, aren't I?
No. I'm okay. Where were we?
All right, let me continue. He was a child. He could only assume this was the famed canter that the ponies were always mentioning. Looking down at the city, he found its layout wanting. It was certainly beautiful and had a theatrical flair. It was not an offensive opposition. There was, motherfucker, what are you saying? They have a massive purple ball. That's all they need. There was well little exploitable cover, and the streets ran parallel to each other. There were no exploitable choke points to be had. Peter scoffed out loud. Celestia's
You can tell that I thought this through. Ooh.
Canterlot is very undefendable, unacceptable.
Celestia speaks further than
it's on the side of a mountain, but it's hard to defend.
Yeah, literally on a mountain.
It's built, well, to be fair, it does look like it's literally built on a palisade that's built into the mountains. You just knock down the palisade and it's gone.
Yeah. Fuck, I should have done that.
He just kills the entire population of Canterlot.
Yeah, just fucking put down some C4 foundation. The entire just falls
down. I read a fan fiction about some guy doing that. He just blows up the supports. Like a villain. And he just like causes the Canterlot castle to crash into the city.
Perfect.
No, we just need like an architecture, like a safety inspector going around for just detailing all the landmarks and how they're gonna fall down and kill everyone.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah. They put it down in front of the royal pony's sister's palace. Once again, Dieter noted its focus was on ostentation rather than military efficiency. At least the Reichstag had some tactical use along its ostentation. The gates were opened when the guards noticed that it was their ruler that wished access. Dieter received odd looks. Oh shit. They had never seen anything like him before. Captain Shining Armor, notably regarded with his paramount hostility.
Okay, the odd thing is that there's minotaurs that live there, so they probably have seen something like that.
Yeah. So let's take a last name. Well,
no, ponies are all inherently racist, remember?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Equestria is the perfect ethno state, don't you know?
Yeah, it is.
But why do the Earth ponies exist then?
To be the slaves.
Fucking mudbloods.
Yeah, Celestia glanced at him. What do you think? Dieter started.
Sorry.
Oh,
I
yeah,
I get to do Luna. I demand I get to do
Yeah, but it's your line right now. And
The palace is poorly defensible. Your troops are poorly trained and equipped. Furthermore, the nobility is too heavily concentrated at the city. If this place were to be destroyed, your nation's head would be effectively severed, leaving no one in a leadership position. The power vacuum would result in continual warfare, eventually leading to the degradation of the equestrian power base. I noticed it in a few minutes. What took you so long? This speech was delivered with a curt, logical matter-of-factness.
Celestia was flabbergasted. The human always thought of warfare before all things. What kind of world did he come from for such wild thinking to manifest itself? Celestia couldn't imagine what the Earth must have been like.
Sister, what hast thou brought here? The shout carried across the palace. Strangely resonating, looking up, Dieter saw a midnight blue alicorn glide from the topmost spire.
Celestia sighed. Luna, keep it down, you stupid bitch.
Luna frowned. Pray tell, hast thou brought us another subject for experimentation?
Hello, Mengele. Celestia was about to respond. Celestia was about to respond when she heard a clicking noise beside her.
I love the brief pause after you read that.
What if I walked into?
And she heard a clicking noise beside her. Turning, she found Dieter with his large weapon aimed directly between Luna's eyes.
Dieter spoke in even tones. Touch me, and you will die.
Luna blinked. She was not used to being spoken to in such a way. She was not used to being spoken to at home. She was usually kept in the castle basement, after all. Her ethereal mane quickened in its movements, the stars shining brighter in response to the surge of adrenaline that came. But the creature said, that's an actual piece of that. I'll give you credit. That's actually credit.
What's that?
Like the adrenaline making their manes more ethereal. That's genuinely creative.
I literally did not think about it, so
Her
no
horn-
credit is due.
Her horn began to glow, and Dieter's finger began to tighten on the trigger, so as to quickly step between them. Luna, this is Abendführer Dieter Heinrich of the Kunststaff, our guest. Abendführer, this is my sister and co Princess Luna. Dieter did not respond. He stood still for a moment, like a statue, before flicking the safety on his gown back on, and returning it to his shoulder. No shudder, was the weapon capable of. Entering the throne room, Dieter was suddenly confronted by a pure white unicorn with a golden mane. This can only end well. From the unicorn's pondering, as he assumed that it was a noble, the unicorn stopped in front of him, blocking his path. I see you, abomination! How dare you defile the sanctity of this throne room? I bid thee leave at once. Heed me, or I will strike you with my magic. Flee before his blue blood. The unicorn spoke haughtily. Dieter ignored him and pressed further into the room. Blue blood was obviously offended by Dieter's cold demeanor and came to stand before him again. He refused to obey your betters God.
The royal was cut off when Dieter's fist encircled his horn, pulled his head back in a swift motion. Dieter's knife was against his throat.
Oh God, this...
Oh.
Just a second. Is he about to give him the suck? Because we can't show it.
Am I reading this or you? I want to
You're reading this. I'm just...
Dieter paused before hissing into Blueblood's ear. I was at Stalingrad, you know. We ate horses.
Oh, same.
Blueblood gulped. Dieter continued.
Ignoring the fact that the SS weren't at Stalingrad.
And when I see you, my mouth waters. You are so plump and fat. I imagine that you must be delicious. You look quite appetizing too. I can see you when an apple. I can see you when an apple in your mouth with you on a platter.
Remember, no apples.
After all, you are a horse. Blueblood began to pull away from Dieter with all his might. He was squealing incoherently, his fear of being eaten overriding his normal regality. Dieter suddenly let go of Blueblood's horn, sending him crashing to the ground. Dieter glanced back at the two sisters, noting their looks of stunned indignation. Dieter turned and continued further into the palace, indifferent. Luna whispered into Celestia's ear.
We have to yell it out. You have to yell it out. God damn it. You have to yell it out. It's not Luna.
I have a bad feeling about this!
Whispered!
Yes, that's Luna whispering.
But, author's note. As people requested, I have included Blue Blood Dash. Alright, enjoy.
I enjoyed.
We are on chapter 10 now.
Oh my god, the next chapter after this is fucking perfect. So you're reading the next chapter.
Okay, I'm reading the next chapter.
Wait, give me a second. I need to try and get something. I need stemmis.
I don't remember any of this.
I need more main 6. Come on.
Wow, this is such a good anime.
Drunken haze.
Again, I demand
Basically,
to pay
yeah.
for my therapy after this.
This is your therapy.
Wait, am I reading? I'm reading chapter 11 or chapter 10?
You are reading the chapter titled Changelings.
Oh, okay, yes, I will be reading that chapter.
Oh.
Oh, wait, I remember what happens in that chapter, no!
Yes, you're reading it, you motherfucker.
You get fucked.
Oof.
You get a
I can only
fucking
imagine.
overload.
I'm gonna read it.
I
if I
can-
Alright, let's get on with this. Events
Okay.
in Canterlot.
Okay,
Who's
chapter
gonna write? Who's gonna write the code?
What?
I
Right,
mean,
what?
it's an event. Someone has to.
Oh, yes, we're gonna write Dieter. Can we make Dieter a country leader? Like how we have Hermann Göring and Huey
Yeah,
Long?
Batty.
Let's just put
Yeah.
Dieter in the mod.
It's pretty much like
He's
another
put
line.
Dieter in the mod. He's gonna
But
be the Nazbol Republican in Griffin's.
God damn it! I hate.
Nazbol.
No.
Love it.
I
Do it.
fucking
Not
hate
even
that.
Nazbol.
I
I
hate
want this.
all of you. I hate all of you.
No, he's got to be the bad guy for Griffinstone.
I'm gonna
Dieter for Emperor! Emperor Dieter!
God damn it! I'm gonna strangle all of you by the end of
Emperor
this.
Dieter!
Impediter.
Events.
I'm-
God damn it! Are we gonna read the story or not?
I'm reading this event, or
No.
you?
I'm reading it. Events in Canterlot. Dieter's time in Canterlot. If he was not. Wow, that's blunt. Naturally, Dieter still thought poorly of the equestrian ability, seeing them as snobby and hypocritical, just like the leadership of the Nazi Party. As such, Dieter found this stay barely tolerable. The ponies were something, looking at them as some sort of, again, like the leaders from the Nazi Party. In truth, Dieter enjoyed their fear. As an SS officer, there was a comment among those who saw them. After all, the SS battalion had been famed throughout the Third Reich. Fear was always expected.
What?
Some of the nobles could really irritate Dieter, though. Many had called him an abomination, a demon. Perhaps in many ways they were right. He was in fact a German. Dieter had been fighting for decades. War was his life. He had gotten used to it. For this reason, he could barely put up with the civilians who assumed that the military was a useless institution created for dropouts and fools. What did they know? Dieter could barely restrain himself from violence every time they insulted him with their ignorance. Dieter began to discuss military reforms with the princesses. Dieter never liked doing administrative work, but it was something to do. Dieter found a certain subject anomalous. Magic. What was magic to the ponies? It seemed too sick to even move. When Dieter had extracted the lead bullet to show Celestia, she fainted. She was comatose for 4 days, Dieter had been told. Dieter noticed those 4 days the night didn't end. Right side of the bird had been delicious. Alright, just a quick thing. I want everyone.
Luna thought that Celeste.
Wait, give me a second. I want everyone in the audience this 4-day thing because it's a fucking joke in the later chapters, alright? Luna had thought that Celestia's reaction was hilarious. Jesus Christ.
And remained the only pony willing pony to
Don't.
talk to Dieter.
Jesus Christ.
That's so Luna, though. She would.
This is literally the
Luna.
two edgy kids sitting together at lunch.
Yeah, she would become an SS officer in like a heartbeat.
That soon ended as well. When Dieter had given Luna a particularly bloody and gruesome account of Stalingrad, Luna had been horrified by the cold, matter-of-fact way that Dieter described disembowelment, strangulation, dismemberance, and decapitations.
You mean Luna loved it every moment?
Yes, obviously, but you can't show that when you're wealthy.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't think it through.
Luna
Really?
refused to. Look, man, you're making him.
I know it's a surprise. I know.
No, I mean you're
I
making.
am obviously
No,
such a
just
conflicted
no.
individual.
I'm just saying, you're making a human equestrian story. You have to make the main protagonist be a friend of Luna's and make them become lovers eventually, as in all human equestrians. Yeah,
But I wrote this at a time where I fucking hated the show.
Peter had been told.
Is this a self-insert?
Yes, as you can see, Dom was a member of the SS back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
served
I
with
fucking
Hitler.
personally gassed 6 billion Jews. I'll have you know, I am responsible for the 17 Gorillion.
Is this like is this a copy of pasta now?
As Dieter had been amused greatly by the killer's story, it was probably true. It was on a sunny day that Dieter began sparring against Royal Guards ponies to pass the time. The Guards ponies had proven themselves quite adept at one con them, but Dieter was better, who figured. Each round always resulted in a severe injury for each Guards pony. As Guards ponies have no sense of self-preservation, most of them had been Pegasi. Dieter had eventually gotten bored and was glad when Shining Armor had finally stepped up to the challenge presented. Dieter and Shining Armor stood off against each other in the ring. Shining Armor was a prime example of passion and warfare. Dieter was the pinnacle of cold indifference. Dieter was
I forgot about this. Holy shit.
Combat knife, since using his gun was considered a cheat. Would have done it. Shining Armor really didn't like Dieter.
Who
Really?
would have thought?
Dieter had a grave disrespect for both princesses in Shining Armor's eyes, and Dieter's lack of emotion really turned Shining.
On. I think you mean on.
Yeah, on. Yeah, so Shining would be glad to hurt him. Ah, that's some kinky shit here. At least to simply teach him a lesson. You're going down. Shining Armor called across the ring. Dieter simply shrugged, raising his knife in the back into combat stance. Raise his hands, just with the shining armor to combat him. Shining armor charged with his horn extended. His cobalt tail falling out behind him. I need to realize it was imperative to avoid the horn. It was as much as a goring weapon as it was channeled for magical energy. Peter decided to target Shining first. He sidestepped and extended his right leg. Shining armor tripped with a cry and landed face first into the dirt, breaking his nose. Because ponies are made out of, obviously.
The armor, useless.
Yeah.
Dieter gave one of his wolfish smiles that he definitely had.
Just one of them. He had them in his bag.
Yes, like his grenades and his armor.
Yeah, they're all in his bag.
His ammo.
His armor, 18 magazines, yeah, it's in his bag.
All 20 million magazines he brought with him.
Shining armor stood back up, glaring at Dieter with hatred in his eyes. Dieter had abandoned the ocean. This happened every time he gave away any signs of reality for logic. He could be brutal and ruthless simply because he buried himself. Dieter's face became frozen, an expression of cold concentration like a camp. Shining armor charged again. This time, rather than sidestepping, Dieter simply extended his fist. Dieter's hand collided. This is fucking Looney Tunes. There's a loudly audible crack as Shining Armor's head snapped back. It wasn't lethal, snapped back to reality. But it wouldn't hurt. Shining Armor was struggling to get up again. Dieter knew that to let him get up was to display weakness. He brought his foot down, snapping Shining Armor's right front leg in a sparring match.
Oof.
Shining Armor screamed in agony. Dieter did not seem affected. The audience winced. Dieter kicked Shining Armor in the stomach, shattering several of his ribs.
He fucking kicks him, and he loses several ribs. I want to think about that. Is he like wearing steel-toed boots or something?
I wouldn't be
That's
surprised.
one strong kid. One strong.
He's perfect pure blood Aryan.
Dieter has like steel-toed boots or something.
Shining Armor screamed
He
again.
harnessed his 100% Bavarian phenotype.
Superior German manufacturer.
Oh, man, you can't anymore. This is my
Superior
life.
German.
You know, they should just air this instead of the interview.
Shining Armor screamed again before falling unconscious. Dieter paused for a moment before sheathing his blade. He spun the heel and marched out of the ring, goose-stepping all the way.
Who stepped out of the ring?
And the audience drank away from him, seeing the brutality he was capable of. This display of coldly calculated violence had lasted less than a minute.
Less than
no.
60 seconds.
In this chapter, we saw Dieter screw around with just about everyone in Canterlot.
We're like two guys.
He didn't fuck with any more nobles. Unacceptable.
Anyhow, now for everyone's favorite chapter called The Changelings. I would like for...
This is gonna be my
the good
favorite
one.
chapter.
Oof. Here we go, boys.
Alright,
I know what happens.
chapter 11.
Just for a special thing, this entire chapter by Sodi.
Yes, I'm reading. Chapter 11. Changelings.
I can't believe I fucking wrote this.
Dieter was
Believe it.
leaving Canterlot. There wasn't much point in remaining there, since no one was willing to spar with him anymore. It almost made Dieter sad. Almost. It was probably because he had reduced their best soldier to a quivering wreck. It had taken months for Shining Armor to heal. He'd been in Canterlot for months? It would take months for Shining Armor to heal physically. The psychological impact would probably stay with him much longer. Dieter was disgusted by the ponies. They were weak and incapable of proper military action. It was a miracle that they had lasted so long. Dieter barely looked back as he wandered the ever-free forest. He had been walking for days from Canterlot. He was quite used to such physical activity after marching on the Eastern Front. He would march for miles on end. It was certainly more pleasant than the blasted battlefields of the Eastern Front consisted of. The air was fresh, free of the coppery stench of blood. Dieter was, in fact, thankful for that. The gnarled trees did not seem threatening as the ponies believed them to be. They were actually quite nice, considering that there were no people firing wildly at him from within. Dieter would have liked that. That would have broken up the monotony. Dieter's blue eyes traced back and forth, looking for some signs of movement. There was a faint rustling. Dieter raised his MP40, aiming at the area of the disturbance. A strange insectoid-looking pony creature jumped out in front of him. Dieter stared, aiming for the head. On closer inspection, he found that it had an accordion-like midsection, a shaggy, broken mane, holes in its legs, and oddly glowing green eyes. The creature also had a horn-like protrusion similar to one on a Goliath beetle, and wings that honestly reminded Dieter of a fly. The creature spoke, its voice strangely resonant. I am Queen Chrysalis of the Changelings, and you will be coming with me, human. Bad mistake. Do not try to resist. I have an army. I have use for your superior weaponry and military ability. She laughed in a way that sounded strangely like an inference. Dieter responded, as always, with indifference. Pushing past Chrysalis, she reacted violently, her horn beginning to glow. Chrysalis smiled. Soon she would dominate the human through feeding off of his emotion. What emotion? He doesn't have emotion.
Yeah, it's German. It doesn't have.
This isn't gonna work.
Yeah, wait.
Dieter
Germans
continued
are
walking.
capable of feeling emotion because of their pure Bavarian phenotype, don't you know?
She's gonna
The
eat
green
hatred
glow
for the Jews.
faded. Chrysalis's smile faded along with it. Impossible! The human had no emotions to drain! They were too deeply buried! She couldn't feed off him! Dieter placed his gun on his shoulder, opting to draw his knife. Why waste the ammunition?
Why waste ammunition? Yeah, he shot a phoenix. You know. So apparently,
Come,
according
my
to him,
children, fight for your queen, Chrysalis cried. Immediately, Dieter found his way blocked by 30 creatures on each side, so 60 in total. Each with blue eyes that completely lacked pupils. They were also insectoid. They had holes in their horns and their legs as well. They had wings covered in chitin. That's not how wings work, just like their queen. 91 to 1. What? No. On each side. He had
3
two
sides.
Whoa.
He's pure Bavarian triangle. He has 3 sides.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the first changeling came hard, going for Dieter's lead. Dieter brought his foot back, kicking the changeling in the mouth, knocking
It died.
all of its teeth out. All of it. Another changeling jumped and landed on Dieter's back. Dieter thought the hissing creature.
This is I don't remember football being
promptly
like that.
plunged his knife into its eye, an explosion of green ichor and a scream of pain. Several more came at
He
Dieter,
never uses his
and
gun,
he
by the
became a
way.
blur of
He kills
fists,
all of them with a combat
feet, and
knife.
blades. He swerved around another changeling, striking it in the throat with his knife to sever its head completely. He fucking decapitates someone with a combat
What the
knife?
fuck did I just walk into? Okay,
Peter
bye.
rolled under the flying attack. Peter
The
rolled under the
greatest
flying
story of
attack
all
of
time,
another,
boy.
bringing his knife into its abdomen, twisting the blade as he disemboweled the howling creature, ropes of intestines slicking the earth. Dieter pivoted, delivering a thunderous kick to the head of another changeling, snapping its neck. Dieter smiled grimly. It was all too easy. Several changelings cowered from his hard, cold stare. When they died, when the grenade that Dieter threw into the midst exploded in a flash of incandescent light, limbs were scattered like a demented child throwing his toys. Another changeling charged, its horn glowing green as it channeled power into the attack. Dieter once again sidestepped, seizing its wing, and this is the same tactic he used on Rainbow Dash. The changeling squealed in agony as Dieter tore the wing off with a sharp twist. There was a fountain of emerald gore. I like how he says not to waste the ammunition, but then he uses one of his grenades. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
He has more grenades and bullets.
He
Okay.
has more grenades.
You think I actually thought this through?
He's actually
Yeah,
got
he
a.
has 19 magazines.
Several more changelings came out.
I am
Honestly, he's
experiencing
just turn on
physical
surface
Their
pain
attacks were
on.
predictable,
from this.
and Dieter fought them with great ease. Up and down his blade went, taking throats, removing heads, and slashing limbs. More came, more died. Emerald gore began to cover Dieter from head to toe. His face was locked in an emotionless grimace from sheer concentration. He fought with a fluidity that made his killing moves seem more like a dance. It was a dance of death. Limbs carpeted the ground and blood splayed wildly, blossoming in the air and glittering like diamonds in the sky. It would have been beautiful if each spray of vital fluid had not represented the death of another creature.
Dance
Pretty
of
sure
Death
that does
is the
make
name of
him
a
more
Skyrim mod, by the way.
Dieter struck with skill born of years of conflict, and the queen realized her error. This is where it becomes weird. Chrysalis never realizes her errors. This is wrong.
Obviously, propaganda. Chrysalis never makes a kind of a mistake.
This is
She
totally
stayed at the
non-canon.
edge of the conflict, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Dieter noticed her and slaughtered a path directly towards her, killing all that blocked his path. The ground under him was slicked with blood. You think it would be covered in
Did
corpses?
he getting pretty tired after all this?
No, he's
Yeah,
pure bloodarian.
He's not tired at all. This is fun to him.
Odin
an
grants
Uberman.
him strength.
He's an Uberman.
Peter noticed her, slaughtering a path directly towards her, killing all that blocked his path. The ground under his feet was slicked with blood, and a nearby stream had completely turned green. The queen backed away, but slipped on the mud. Wow, Chrysalis, good job. You can fucking fly, but you slip on the mud. Peter seized her horn, and in one fluid motion snapped it off. The queen screamed in agony. The changeling horde howled as if they felt their queen's pain through a gestalt consciousness. The queen took to flight, hovering over the battle, trying to avoid Dieter as best she could. Dieter looked up with cold calculation as he stomped the head of another changeling soldier, shattering it like a melon. He drew his Luger, aimed, and shot the queen through the eye, the bullet bursting the ball of the socket, and the queen fell to the ground with a cringe, with a rage of pain. She was still alive. The queen looked up at Dieter with fear in her eyes as he approached. She tried to scramble back. Dieter shattered her legs with his heavily booted feet. Seriously, he's wearing steel-toed boots. His lack of emotion as he carried out his bloody deed was terrifying. He really gets hard on this lack of emotion thing. The queen's eyes began to fill.
Think it's the emotion? I can't tell.
As she realized she was likely going to die. Please, she begged. Please, I'm only trying to feed my children. I have to look away to see if my sister has noticed me reading this, and she has not. Okay, I'm going to continue. Dieter cocked the weapon to her temple. The gun didn't waver. Dieter glared at her with a cold-hearted intent. His finger began to tighten the trigger. No, please, have mercy, the queen screamed. She cried, trying her best to escape the inevitable. Dieter paused, regarding her for a moment. The queen felt a flutter of hope, as she thought perhaps he wasn't going to kill her. Those hopes were soon shattered. I have none left to give, Dieter whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, and he pulled the trigger. The bullet passed through the barrel of the Luger and broke
The original line.
Tough chitinous skin. That's
Chitinous.
It shattered the skull, driving bone fragments into the queen's brain. The bullet punctured through the meaty portion of the brain, severing important blood vessels and reducing it to pulp. The bullet proceeded to shatter through the other side of the skull, puncturing through the other temple to bury itself in the earth. It took less than a second. I guess. The queen's death sent a psychic backlash through the changeling's gestalt mind. Her death caused a major system shock that caused the mental breakdown of each and every single changeling. The bonds that attached the changelings to each other were severed, and their minds were fried as the queen's death scream washed over them. All over Equestria, changelings would stand rigid, their eyes losing their glow, and would fall, and greenish blood would flow from their open mouths as their brains exploded in their heads. Ponies would watch in horror as their fellow quote-unquote ponies would scream and fall to the ground, dying spasmodically.
But they don't scream. Oh, never mind.
Their disguises would evaporate and the truth would be revealed. Such an event happened in Celestia's throne room itself, and the event left Celestia stunned by shock. Oh boy, this is the best part. In less than a second, Dieter had exterminated every single changeling in Equestria.
Oh god.
Gas.
It was a feat that the Royal Guard had spent years in pursuing without success. Dieter did not give any sign of joy or arrogant celebration. He simply holstered his Luger and continued walking deeper into the forest, noticing his coat wasn't even torn again. The changelings haven't even managed to touch him. Dieter was interrupted by a single cry.
It's this pure Bavarian phenotype.
Pure pain and agony. It is almost as if the warp itself was trying to warn him. Cutie Muck Crusaders, Waffen SS.
Time.
You make this.
3 fillies emerged from the forest.
I'm sorry, what?
With an orange Pegasus with eyes and mane that were both purple. There was a red pure unicorn with green eyes and purple-white mane. And finally, there was a yellow filly with amber eyes and a red mane. None of them, Dieter noted coldly, had their cutie marks. It seems like they didn't seem at all fazed by the extreme violence that had just taken place.
Pure
But
Aryan
damn
blood.
it, Dieter thought. These ponies don't know when to stop. The ponies started bouncing around him, holding onto his legs. They were not worried at all that he was capable of killing them in an instant. They seemed to line up expectantly. That was awesome, cried the orange Pegasus excitedly. That was amazing, gasped the yellow one. Dieter noted it had the same accent as Applejack. He wondered offhandedly if they were
Yeehaw.
related. What they said the white one. Dieter sighed. Yeah, no, he was no good with children. Plus, they were not just any children. They were
Really?
the offspring of ponies. I would have imagined Dieter was great with kids, to be
He
honest.
was good at pies, you know?
They were most likely more
Sharing
annoying
his
than
his
humans.
great old war stories, you know? There's
Glared
nothing
at them
children love
coldly,
more than
giving none of them
massacres.
his thoughts
Dieter,
away.
babysitter
Dieter
number
once
1.
again showed his capacity to lack any emotion. This gets mentioned every single fucking paragraph.
Every
Yes,
line.
it does.
You'll never know
Yes,
my
it does.
pain.
What are you doing here? We're the Cutie Mark Crusaders, and we're here to crusade for our cutie marks. They cried together. We want to be part of the SS.
Oh no!
Dieter responded.
I mean, who think we can call the story?
Shut the fuck up.
No.
Dieter thought of responding with hostility. It would be amusing. But a better idea struck him. He smiled coldly at them.
He should have
almost
said
predatorily.
yes. I should have made him say
Took a
yes.
step closer to them as they took a step back, finally realizing his
I want to
potential.
fucking circumcise myself for not having him say yes.
Can you kill? When you are in the Waffen SS, you must be prepared to disembowel anything on a moment's notice. Even yourself. Even your own family cannot be exempted from this order. He stared at the yellow one, his piercing gaze. Then goes,
Wow, the edge.
are you willing to live
Shadow,
a life
Shadow
like
the
a professional
Hedgehog, Waffen
murderer?
SS.
Are you willing to
No.
spend years learning how to kill? The fillies shook their heads. No! Then go home! With that, Dieter turned on his heel and marched away further into the forest.
Oh, that's done.
Well, that's done. Special thank to Nugget Manu 2 for proofreading. Check out his stories. They're worth
He
the
wasn't
read.
even
Thank you
good at
for
writing.
reading.
I don't know why I made him my proofreader.
And that is the end of chapter 11.
Man, this anime got so weird.
I'm even top this
The
anymore.
protagonist is so good, though.
Yeah. I'm done. I can't anymore.
Read the Transcendent Edition. Do
No,
it.
no, I can't do
No,
this
please
anymore.
do.
Do
It's
it.
great.
Do it.
Alright, should we just do the Transcendent thing at that course a day
Yes.
or what?
You had better. It doesn't
I'm
get
gonna
it.
keep
The
reading.
SS
Fuck
and
it.
Equestria
I'm
does
still
not
reading.
get any
How
better.
can we not? How can we not finish this? Come on. Fuck.
We're going till we're dead,
No.
Cyrus.
God damn it. Alright, next chapter is me because it's
Okay.
We need
are
we need more men.
Are we alternating chapters then, Cyrus?
yeah, again.
Okay.
I should probably get something to eat.
I'm gonna
You
get
can
something
have
to drink while Cyrus reads chapter 12.
What chapter is this? 12? Yeah.
Cadence.
12.
Chapter
Cadence,
12.
oh boy.
Oh,
Oh
yes,
boy.
this part.
Oh. Chapter 12, Cadence. Dieter had been marching for days. It hadn't been non-stop after all. Dieter had stopped to eat and rest. However, he only paused for a few minutes each day. Dieter had been well conditioned and was well used to long marches. Dieter was slightly annoyed, however, when he arrived back in Kenterlot. He had been traveling in circus. In hindsight, it was easy for it to happen in the tangled mess of the Everfree Forest. Peter considered turning back into the Everfree Forest simply to avoid the naive ponies. I can completely understand him in this situation. Our logic dictated that he could find some meat to eat and catch a lot. Ponies were herbivores that didn't
Logic
eat meat.
dictated. Nothing here is logical.
Herbivore didn't eat meat, so he would have to kill something, preferably a pony. House pets were safer than bath lovers. Dieter knew this firsthand. He had eaten several different kinds of animals on the Eastern Front without issues, but the bath lovers that he had butchered and eaten had caused severe stomach sickness. Once again, Dieter was stared at by a number of ponies as he marched into the city. The ones his eyes set upon shrank back from his glare. Good, they remembered him. A bird landed in front of him. Dieter supposed it would have to do. His hand shot out, wrapping around the bird's plump form. Dieter lifted the struggling creature to his eyes. The animal chirped in terror at the cold blue eyes that seemed to burrow into its soul. Dieter quickly squeezed the bird to death. The ponies gasped in horror at the brutal killing that had occurred. They still weren't used to
His
it.
pure Bavarian phenotype enables him to simply tighten his hand a little bit and everything fucking dies.
Yes, obviously.
Just that click
Dieter
of his
ca-
fingers, you know?
Dieter
Squeezes
carried
with the power of the right.
The Fuhrer's will flows through my hands.
Fear me.
Oh, Jesus. Dieter carried the limp form into the nearest restaurant. He slammed open the door with enough force to split the wooden cabinet at its strap. The cook stared in the hands. Get me a cutting board, Dieter. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, it's right.
Everything this man touches breaks.
Yes.
Sorry, it's Dieter speaking. It's
okay.
It is Dieter speaking.
I was hungry and I needed the protein. Oh wait, get me a cutting board, Dieter demanded quietly. Oh wait, with cold indifference. Quietly. I don't think Dieter knows how to be quiet.
Get me the cutting board!
Get the cutting board now.
Get me the cutting board immediately.
Yeah, you know how this story ends. He just becomes the Gordon Ramsay of this world. He just becomes the Gordon Ramsay of this world. Once again, Dieter was. God damn it. The kid brought out the cutting board and fled deeper into the restaurant. When he assumed that Dieter could not find him, Dieter smiled. He wanted to kill Cook, he would already be dead. Dieter drew his combat knife and quickly beheaded the lifeless corpse of the bird. He held it by the foot and allowed the blood to drain, then sliced the bird open and proceeded to gut it. The intestines and other organs went in the trash to rot, just like the Black Rock focus tree. The corpse was deboned. Dieter threw the headless corpse into a pot. Without ceremony, he began to boil it. Within half an hour, the bird was fully cooked, and an aromatic smell rose from the pot. Dieter brought his meal out on a plate. He noticed several royal guards slowly standing in front of the restaurant. Upon seeing him, they began to inch back. This really injured their commander, and was fully capable of killing them with ease. They began to explain to the civilians that Dieter has special clearance, to raid restaurants. They fled. Dieter smiled coldly. Once again, this race had proved itself weak. He began to eat using a knife to cut strips of the bird's flesh. It was very tender. He noted that several of the ponies had begun to vomit through their nostrils, like all horses.
Vomit through their nostrils.
No, that's an actual thing.
Yeah, that is
through their nostrils.
And humans can do it as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I've done it. Once.
Yeah,
It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it
I
happened
imagine.
to
Yeah, I
me
can
as well.
imagine. Jeez.
They obviously didn't like the thought of eating meat. Dieter quietly finished his meal. There, a flash of bright light, Dieter saw a pink helicorp flying towards him. This, he assumed, was Princess Cadence, if you remember correctly. She was trying to harm his wife, and he bought him into bluff. Dieter stared at her with a cold disdain, not even ignorant to be with each other. What was the old American saying? Birds of a feather flock together? So can you confirm this? Is this an American saying?
This is in fact a saying.
Alright.
It is a saying, yes, but I don't think it was American actually.
What's the saying? I didn't
It's
hear
Birds
it.
of a feather
British.
flock. Yeah, it was British. I don't think it was around in that time. Maybe I don't know.
I
Yeah.
really don't
Got
know. I really don't care.
This is like the
Cadence-
only thing. Come on, this is the only thing in this story that isn't research.
Alright, Caden stopped before him. Dieter rose, not out of respect. He was done with his meal and prepared to leave. Caden stopped him with a hint of sadness. How could you do this? She asked quietly, obviously disturbed by the eating of meat in her presence. That's racist against griffins.
Dieter
Grunted.
grunted. I was hungry, and I needed the protein. His face was a mask of calm, as always.
Just in case you forgot.
Caden spoke with softness. Can't just eat and you can't just take another life like this. We must live in peace, love, and harmony. I'm having saying this.
Love, harmony, peace.
There is only war.
Such concepts are alien. I have walked through hell and back. I have seen my friends torn to shreds, my own brother disemboweled by friendly shell fire. How do you expect me to
Literally the
believe in such
major.
naive concepts?
He's fucking the major. I just realized this. He's the
Yeah.
major from Helsing.
Nah, the major from Helsing is actually
No, but Major's cool. This guy isn't
yeah.
Yeah.
This guy's just
Yeah.
edge.
He gets all the chicks, thank you.
Cadence blinked. Love can heal anything. I banished the chasings with love and shit. That Canterlot I used to do it.
Peter laughed coolly.
Great dialogue.
Chrysalis, that parasite. When she was regrouping with her army to Chrysalis, you mean, that parasite, when she was regrouping her army to renew her assault on the capital. She attacked me in her arrogance. I killed her without guilt. Your love did not stop her. You merely gave her pause to reconsolidate her power. I killed her, and in doing so, exterminated that pitiful species.
I don't know how he knew that.
Literal genocide.
I mean, I guess he just assumed that the entire species died because a couple of them like had their.
I
heads
guess he
exploded.
noticed on his walk back to Canterlot. People.
Oh look, there's a lot of green around.
Oh, there's a lot of bodies. I guess I must have genocided.
Wherever I must
Oopsie.
go, I must genocide.
No, he's like Ben Garrison. He's Ben
Only Dieter could accidentally genocide.
Dieter bug stomper Heinrich.
Cadence blanched. You killed her. How could you? You could have given her a second chance.
Dieter smiled like a wolf. A second chance. In nature, there is no second chance. The strong survive, the weak perish. She was weak, so she died. That is the purest embodiment of the Third Reich. Your species is weak. Unless you miraculously find strength in yourself, you too will die. History can only repeat itself.
Cadence began to cry like a little bitch. How could you believe something like that? What kind of world do you come from? What kind of people can find in their capacity to exterminate entire races?
Dieter held up a silencing hand.
You know, he's indicating that he would do it. You know, just
Just keep
Yes,
it again.
what kind of people? He just raises his hand. My people
I've killed
do.
this many Jews.
If I did not believe it, would I have crippled your husband? If I did not believe it, would I have crippled your husband?
Cadence sobbed once again like a little bitch. You didn't want to do that to Shiny. Why? She fairly choked the last word.
He was weak. Dieter replied, he was weak and arrogant. It was inevitable. Better in sparring than in a war. He turned and walked away, while behind him, Cadence wept in horror.
We also say it's a copy.
Oh, the edge.
It's just a copy paste.
Alright, your chapter. Jesus Christ.
This is worse than I remembered.
This is great.
Oh god
This
damn
is
it.
beautiful.
Chapter 13, Glory to the Horned Rat. Violence is magic.
Kill man thing.
Dieter was leaving Canterlot for the second time when Celestia confronted him. When Dieter looked back, he found that it had always been inevitable. Their incompatible ideologies and his coarse nature always meant that she was eventually going to go after him. Celestia stood resplendent with her white fur and ethereal mane, her royal regalia gleamed. Dieter wasn't impressed. Very few things could impress him, simply because he was indifferent to beauty and glory. What was the point? Everything would eventually die. Obenführer Dieter Heinrich of the Waffenschutzstaffel. You are under arrest for the illegal killing of animals, the verbal abuse of royals, and contempt against the crown. Celestia spoke loudly. She glanced at several of her guards' ponies. Take him.
Why did she come to this?
Dieter sighed.
Oh my
He had
lord.
constantly demonstrated his capability and the fact he was willing to kill, and these creatures always seemed to give him an excuse to kill more of them.
What a nice
Through
way.
It just keeps
They
happening.
in an expression of logical emotion contemption. He didn't really care how many he had to kill. They attacked him, they would face the consequences. Four guards pony charged Dieter. He noticed that their movement was hesitant, reluctant. They were afraid of him. Dieter almost smiled. The fear was natural when facing a superior Aryan warrior. Dieter capitalized on their fear. He was a blur. Dieter drove the knife through the eye of the first god's pony, who cried out in agony as his eyeball was punctured. He collapsed, dead. Dieter wrenched the knife out and pivoted and drove the knife through the next god's pony's jugular, sending blood spewing through the street. He broke the leg of the third with a well-aimed kick, and stomped on his throat, snapping the spine. Again, jackboots, man. Dieter rounded on the last pony, who stared at him with fearful defiance. Dieter gripped the god's pony's head, wrenching it at 108 degrees, snapping his neck. All four of the guards' ponies were dead. The civilians had fled. The street was completely smeared with blood. Iker ran down the cracks between the cobblestones, seeping into the ground beneath.
Oh yeah, you will notice that I like describing blood a lot in the story.
Yes, I have noticed. Dieter glanced at his blade. It was covered in gore up to the hilt. He cleaned it on the dead guard's pony's fur. It was blind disrespect for the dead. No, it isn't.
It's honorable, you know?
He's just putting it back where he found the blood.
Yeah,
What a
He can't-
nice guy.
he can't
Here's blood
steal.
back.
Celestial
go,
was shocked
Control.
into stillness. She was barely
Sir, you
breathing.
lost your
Her
blood.
eyelids were fluttering, as if her brain had had a hard time processing the input. Dieter knew the look. Celestia was shell-shocked. They were surprised it had taken that little to send her into stress. He shrugged, indifferent as always. He gave her a mock salute, arm parallel to the ground, as he walked back towards the ever-free forest from fucking Canterlot? Okay, that's a long way.
Like he's goose-stepping.
He just
He's fucking
teleports
just goose-stepping out of Canterlot, doing the
You
fucking
stepped
Nazi
the
salute.
whole way.
Where did he
I
shoot
didn't
his
know it
man?
was that close.
Peter had been walking in random directions for some time. He was trying to reach Germany. Germany.
Oh, this part.
Oh
hoped it
boy,
would be similar
now
to
we're getting to the real shit.
Because of the
This
similarity
is the
with
real
the
gay
name.
shit.
It's
had
literally the
enough
Weimar
of the
Republic,
ponies.
but it's
We-
ponies.
Pathetic.
Wait. Is this next chapter
No,
Germany? Yeah.
no, we're not there yet.
Alright.
Dieter hoped he would never have to put up with them again. Their ideas of love and tolerance above all else had no place in a dark and dangerous world. Dieter knew that their nation would likely collapse soon. Simply because they did not take the initiative. The weak would perish, the strong would survive. Dieter was slightly annoyed when he emerged at Ponyville once again. Why was he always emerging at some sort of pony settlement? There's something directing him here. Some sort of weird, strange god, perhaps.
The
One
plot?
that's very
Sure.
He
Dumb.
wishes that the maps were more accurate. The maps that the ponies used were more pieces of art than useful directions. That is an accurate way to describe all of the equestrian maps that I've ever seen. He had a better chance of marching randomly than he did using one of the maps. The goose step would obviously lead him to Germany.
he goose steps everywhere.
No,
He was
just,
about to turn back
just-
into the forest when he heard yelling from within the town. Dieter certainly didn't care if the town's citizens were dying, but he was curious as to what was happening. He strode into the town. Many of the ponies began shrinking away from him, having heard he was the one who exterminated the Untermensch changelings. Dieter ignored them, focusing instead at where the yelling was coming from. He saw what to be seems the combination of an eagle and a lion. Dieter knew what it was.
Oh
It was
no. Oh
It was
no,
yelling
it's
at
this
Rainbow Dash,
chapter.
accosting every living thing in sight.
Oh, I get another light.
Dieter stared in a cold, off-handed interest. Griffins were supposed to be warriors. Perhaps it could be worth talking to. The griffin suddenly spun to face him. It laughed. Is this another one of your dweebish friends, Rainbow Dash? Dieter was amused. This thing had the audacity to insult him?
Oof.
Rainbow
Oi,
Dash.
Marlene.
Oh wait, yeah, you. Sorry,
Oh no.
that's you.
I did alright. Gilda?
Rainbow Dash's tone was one of worried warning. She had seen the violence which with Dieter could operate. Gilda swept up to Dieter. Scram, little guy, or I might hurt you. Isn't he taller than her? She said, prodding him with her talons. Dieter looked at her with indifference. Do not touch me. Gilda scoffed loudly, bumping him against with her talon. Or what? Dieter suddenly brought his hand up and caught her talon with his fist. With a quick twist, he snapped the limb. Gilda shrieked in agony, and Dieter rounded to her side, where her wings were beating frantically. He pulled out a knife and slashed downwards, completely severing the wing from her body.
Hell yeah.
Gilda fell on her side.
Oof.
Dieter pressed down on her throat with his boot. He placed the knife to her cardioid, pretending to enter there and then.
Stop!
Screamed Rainbow Dash. Dieter paused. Isn't Dieter's whole thing is that he does not pause at all? Like he's an indifferent word? Why is he pausing?
Yeah, look.
He respects
He
Rainbow
didn't
Dash.
pause because he pitied Gilda. He didn't even pause because Rainbow Dash asked him. He simply paused to draw it out.
Oh.
Okay, Gilda. Oh wait.
Alright, so.
Oh, okay. Gilda may be a joke, but you can't kill her because of that. All things deserve a second chance. In the name of decency, please spare her, please.
Dieter smiled. I'm just gonna leave it there. Dieter smiled. His face taking a wolfish aspect, he spoke with cold amusement. Rainbow Dash found herself chilled by his expression. You know, Chrysalis said the same thing. Dieter straightened his back, sheathed his knife, and everyone gathered there gave a collective sigh with relief. He drew his Luger. I shot her. Since the same argument of used, the method of death will be the same. Dieter leveled the pistol at Gilda's forehead. She looked up defiantly. Dieter was satisfied. At least this one had guts. He pulled the trigger. The bullet punctured the skull, shattering the bone and opening a hole in Gilda's head the size of his fist. This bird is
A bullet the size of his face. Hold on a second.
Yeah, no, the hole is the size of his
Yeah.
fist. The bullet went through the blade, pulping
Okay,
through with sheer force.
He infused it with the will of Himmler. He said a quick prayer to the Reichsfuhrer SS. Infused the bullet with his Aryan will, and ripped a hole in her head with the ghost fist that he was teleporting there from fucking Tibet. Because he found the Holy Grail. There you go. There's the
Perfect.
explanation.
Arthur's official explanation.
The deep
hang
lore
on.
of
This is
this
now
story.
canon.
Wait, hang on a second. Not
The
the
Fuhrer.
Christian though.
Yeah, the author is the Dominator.
So when can we expect the sequel?
It's already been
Never.
written.
Never. You will never see it.
I shall write it.
You should make
Well,
a
we have to
sequel.
rewrite.
You set up some nice plot points
Oh
to
shit,
follow.
I just realized I was not hitting my push to talk button.
Look,
Okay.
the sequel was literally just going to be him raping his way across Africa.
The bullet continued forth and punctured Gilda's throat, severing the spinal cord, brain matter and blood seeping into the earth.
Which to
Gilda
become
had
British?
died instantly, her face frozen in a death scream.
raping
think
his
this-
way across Africa with Nazi battle mechs.
She only showed fear when Dieter pulled the trigger. It was likely involuntary, as her mental defenses shut down in death. The body continued to twitch for some time. Then there was silence. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I am continually amazed at how edgy this gets.
Again.
Dieter looked around, his face set in emotionless calm. The ponies began to edge away
In case
from
you
him.
forgot.
They didn't run, afraid of catching his attention. Rainbow Dash was speechless. Gilda had been her friend at one point, and now she was dead. Rainbow Dash hovered, frozen in shock. Can your friendship do that? Dieter spat in contempt.
I love
Yes.
how
Author's note, special thanks to this motherfucker who did the proofreading again.
Yeah,
And
once
blah,
again,
blah,
I
blah,
must
next
reiterate, he
chapter.
was not a good proofreader.
Can I point out- Can I point
Germany,
out
we're on
that after-
chapter 14.
Yeah.
Can I point out that after, out of context,
Yeah.
that the top comment is, it's really difficult with all that positivity.
Alright. I'm reading the next chapter. I'm ready.
You know,
So-
this guy really needs to get hit by the magical
No,
friendship.
reading the comments is actually better than reading the story itself.
Do genocide.
Where's
Alright,
one of the
which
comments?
chapter is
Mecha
it?
Hitler.
No,
If
which
you're going
chapter?
that far, go to Mecha Hitler. Just
And
put
what
Mecha
the-
Hitler in a question. Let's see what happens.
Just fucking
Read the fucking chapter.
when you eventually get to the transcendental
Yeah,
edition.
can we just continue?
Mhm.
Chapter 14, Germany. The air of your forest was burning. This was not some accidental fire. This fire was intentionally set. Centuries worth of trees crackled in the firelight. Sparks floated lazily on the breeze. The majority of the forest was already burning. Animals and monsters alike scurried to and fro, trying to avoid the licking flames. In a few hours, the forest had been reduced to cinder, consumed by the intense flames. Peter smiled, because his maps were inadequate. There was continual loss in the other forest. Peter had set the fire. Now he would not get lost, and the path to Germany was clear. Yeah, it's very telling that the Germans setting on fire. That's what they actually did.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
I need to actually just like somehow get into working with this mod. Jesus Christ.
Peter began to march to the northeast. It was now a great wasteland and broken and immense, just like real Germany. The feeling was familiar. The Swiss used scorcher tactics on the eastern front. Peter had been continuing marching through the wastelands for most of the war up until Stalingrad. The fact that there were no craters was a relief. However, there were corpses and spades. Many of the animals burned to death in the inferno. In hindsight, the fact that the Pegasi had averted the fire from Ponyville was nothing short of miraculous. Peter would have to look into the military capacity of Pegasi. Peter marched for days. Space unbroken,
Goose
paused
steps
only
for
to eat
days.
and drink. When he got the opportunity, the ever-free forest come to an end a while back, and Dieter was now climbing mountains. There were very little wildlife in the mountain, and Dieter ate once a day, killing for food. Dieter came to the edge of the mountain range and saw in the distance a great land of industrial might. Cold smoke rose in the wind, and clang of metal could be easily heard. Already, northern Turkey reminded Dieter of home. They were obvious an industrious group. Dieter hoped they had military might to go with. He had plans. The Ottoman Empire may have fallen, but he would create a new empire in his own name. He'd begin by conquering the equestrian world. He needed support.
Conquering the world! No, that's his first idea. He has to conquer the world.
Why are you
In
bringing
the
up
universe!
Wait,
Let's
hang
spread the
on,
mind ways.
hang on.
And
Why
the
would
moon!
Dieter reached
Hi.
the
world.
I'm desperately concerned about why they chose the Ottoman Empire instead of the Austrian Empire, because the Austrian
No,
Empire
that's
would
just
make them
Cyrus being shit. It
Nazi.
said Third Reich.
Oh,
He's just
that
being
makes
a
fucking
meme.
sense now.
That was a joke on Muslim immigrants in Germany.
All right, so I literally cannot tell the difference between a fucking joke and this fucking fanfiction.
That's fair.
You know, I think this might be the edgiest OC I've ever seen.
Cyrus, why are you muted?
I had the edgiest
Cyrus.
plushie.
Oh,
Cyrus.
goddammit, sorry.
Crawling
Dieter
in my
re-
crawl.
God damn it, can we continue?
These
Yes.
crawls will never crawl.
Yeah, Dieter reached Turkey. It was almost a broken mass of buildings and factories. Wait, that can't be Turkey. Found that most of the ponies there had gray coats.
No,
No,
that's
excuse me.
Turkey. That's Turkey's German colony.
The ponies there had brown coats, black manes, and brown irises. The similarities to Turks were rare in a way. The only way one could really tell them apart was by their cutie marks. Each mark was upon what looked like 3 moons. Most of the cutie marks involved military implements such as swords, spears, and surprisingly, bombs. This was a militaristic society. Peter knew that this would be where he would begin. Peter had read of the Turkish history at the Cantonal Library. He knew that they had gone to war with Croatia. They had been beaten through a lack of supplies. The Turks would have won, Peter had realized, if it had not been for food shortages. They were militarily aware than the Equestrians and were tactically and strategically superior. Peter knew he would start his bid to power. Peter continued walking until he had reached the Turkish capital of Istanbul. He strode up the stairs of a building that looked surprisingly like the Hagia Sophia. According to reports that Dieter had to gather in Equestria before he left, the leader of the Turkish Republic was old and ill. He would soon die. Parallels to Turkish history.
Okay, this Turkish joke was funny at first, but
All right.
Okay.
Very odd, Dieter. However, took them to the downs for his plans. He approached his secretary. He reviewed an archipelago to a clipboard superimposed over an iron cross. Dieter stared at her, intimidating calm. His blue eyes seeming to radiate a cold light. Dieter leaned close that she could see his iron cross. Recognition came into her eyes and she saw the symbol of Germany. Take me to see your president. No, take me to your leader.
Take me to see your president. Dieter,
you have to say,
quiet.
God damn it, we can improve this. You can say, take me to your leader.
Take me to your leader. Take me to your leader, Dieter said quietly.
President Von Ponyberg was old, weak, and easily manipulated. Confronted
by fucking Dieter.
Confronted by this being for an reality. Dieter explained to him that Germany had become great. Germany, he reasoned, was a parallel universe equivalent. History could only repeat itself. Germany would be great under his leadership. Ponyberg didn't bother asking how Dieter had come to his vote, bowing acceptance and declaring Dieter his successor. Next day, Ponyberg died under mysterious circumstances. Dieter stood on a podium before the parallel Reichstag. He stared out over the grey mass of ponies. He gestured, pounded his fist over his heart, and finally lifted an arm parallel to the ground in parody of the that he had been using in the Republic. Ponies raised their right to the front legs. Heil Heinrich! The crowd roared.
And so it begins, Dieter whispered, smiling coldly.
In 1253, the Equestria found Dieter Heinrich was crowned for Germany. This was despite the fact that he was not equine. Dieter took a much less extreme stand in comparison to the Third Reich, not endorse mass murder or the death camps, rather than exterminating subjugated races, simply had them integrated with the German society as lesser races that could work their way up through satisfactory labor. Carver, I hope you're taking notes in this, being a Devontiano and everything. In this way, the First German Reich would be considered much more benevolent government than the German Third Reich.
Peter is a traitor. String him up.
Yeah. Fucking hang him.
Your
Has he at least killed the orphans?
No
I have
Yes.
a curious question. Is the SS officer a pony or a human?
He's a
Human.
This make okay, fuck off.
Yeah, I know.
That's the turn away for you? Not the inexplicable amount of age? No, it's because he's a human, not a horse.
No
And these
hooves.
stories can be
No.
funny.
The age
okay?
is totally
No.
explicable. I wrote it when I was 13.
That just explains the fandom's age. Like murdering
Alright.
everyone? Yeah, I love it. No hooves. Oh, wow.
Chapter 15. Invasion. Years passed.
Great.
Under Dieter's leadership, Germany became a powerful military power. That's bad. Okay. With weaponry and destructive potential beyond any nation's comprehension. Using Dieter's vast knowledge, human technologies were reversed engineers, including tanks, artillery, and his beloved MP-40. A strict military hierarchy came into being. Unicorns were officers due to their intellectual and tactical capabilities. Pegasus's role were primarily one of air support. the only equine species capable of flight. They were used in a similar role of bombers. And the earth ponies were reduced to the roles of grunts, doing all the heavy labor. All of this became heavily classified. For all the outside world knew, they were still using spears. Military equipment was
North
never
Korea!
created. North Korea. Does Dieter make Juchi work? Tensions
Saying it
between
doesn't.
Germany
Are
and
you
the
telling
surrounding
me that
nations
GJ
began.
doesn't work? What are you, some kind of revisionist? I
Pussy.
bet you wear glasses, faggot.
Between Germany and its surrounding nations began to rise as they became increasingly hostile and militaristic. Surrounding nations tensed themselves at the apprehension of the giant on their border. They founded the alliance against the Germans, known as the Alliance of Freedom. Equestria declared the leader of this alliance, despite its apparent military weakness. The Allies were confident that they would have victory. They knew that Dieter had, just killed an entire species, but they reasoned that, he's just one guy. They were blissfully unaware of what power Germany possessed.
Please no, please don't turn this into a fucking Axis victory scenario.
Oh, you don't even know!
On July 2nd, 1256 EF, Equestrian founding, an Equestrian Pegasus scout was shot down of Germany. This was the excuse Dieter needed. On the next day, July 3rd, Germany declared war on Equestria. In response, the Soviet Union, France, and the Griffin Kingdom declared war on Germany.
This is it.
This is it,
Dieter
boy. This
was
is the
already
supreme
prepared
edge.
for each eventuality.
This is the true
laying
timeline.
cold out plans for a war unseen like any in this world's history.
Do you want total
This,
war?
this is the point in time where
Total
it
Krieg.
becomes very obvious that I stopped giving a shit.
to be added to the mod.
Total Krieg.
You know what would make
Captain
this fic
Storm
500
Talon's
times
puff-
better if the Allies won?
That'd be great.
Captain Storm Talon puffed up with pride as he saw a neat, ordered rows of the Griffin army. Confidence seemed to ooze from the Griffin forces. The Germans would be defeated easily. They were, after all, spear-wielding savages. Crossbows, aim! There was a loud clatter of crossbows that were leveled to the forest before them. Let them come, Storm Talon thought. They would fall before the Griffin's superior firepower. What this guy doesn't realize is Dieter has already completed the entire doctrine. There was
You've
silence.
Already got super heavy tanks.
Yeah. Storm Talon blinked. Why wasn't there any movement? Surely the Germans would attack soon. Invasions usually came with, a lot of noise and a mass charging of bodies. Perhaps they had chickened out. Storm Talon felt strangely disappointed. He had wanted a good fight. He had hoped they were still coming. Griffins loved to fight. There was a loud sound of thunder in the distance, and a whistling screech bombarded Storm Talon's ear. What was that? There was a massive flash of light, and the dirt was thrown wildly into the air. There was a strange crimson mist, Storm Talons realized with a start that it was blood. It was screaming. He looked back. Several of his men had had limbs blasted off by a strange projectile. They writhed in the dirt, agonizing shouts escaping from their beaks. More thunder sounded, and there were several more shrieks from the air. More explosions resonated. The ground shook. Storm Talon was struck with a moment of indecision. It was as soon as he saw his aide, Private Leatherbeak, decapitated by a piece of shrapnel, as Leatherbeak's vita splattered all over Storm Talon's pure, pretty white feathers. He knew exactly what to do. Retreat! He screamed, as they couldn't deal with something like this. The Griffins began to turn tail and flee.
Run away.
Some
nigga.
ran,
What are they
some
gonna do?
flew, some moved as fast as they could. All moved as fast as they could. A successor of smaller explosions came from nearby, pieces of lead whizzing through the air, striking the Griffins in the back. They shrieked as they pinned and wheeled to the ground ichor making strange patterns in the air. Storm Talon allowed himself a glance back. The gray ponies advanced on their hind legs. This is the part where you tell me Dieter's fucking using pickle house. Upon their faces were strange masks that gave them bug-eyed, insectoid appearances. Upon their right front legs were red armbands with downwards pointing swords. Swords were
Should have been the left.
superimposed over the iron crosses. It was the symbol of the German Reich. The strange boxy weapons magnetically clamped to their hooves spat fire at an alarming rate, shredding easily through the griffins. This is where you tell me each Earth pony's like wielding an MP fucking... No, like an MG42. Just each one. All of them have MG42.
Advancing in lockstep. They're just goose stepping as they're firing MG42s.
A beast of burden from within a forest. A beast burst from within a forest. Wasn't it the forest? Whatever.
It should be.
It growled. Upon closer inspection, Storm Talon found it wasn't an animal at all, but it was a strange contraption made out of metal, a metal box, if you would. It had an angular turret with a cylinder sticking out of it. Storm Talon could only assume it was another type, some sort of weapon. The turret was of the strange vehicle swiveled to face the main body of the fleeing Griffin army. A loud explosion sounded, and smoke billowed from the front end of the cylinder. Storm Talon cried out as he was thrown back by a large blast. He tried to scramble to his feet. They didn't respond. He looked down to find his legs had been completely amputated from the knee downward. He didn't feel any pain, just numbing cold. The adrenaline must have dulled the agony. More scything pieces of lead flew through the air, and Storm Talon almost wept as he saw his comrades falling, crimson holes opening in their backs and their sides, blood slicked in the earth. After a few more minutes, there were no more griffins standing on the field, and the ponies went about the grisly business of field executions. Screams were suddenly cut off by sporadic shots. These ponies are wasting precious ammunition. You should give them bayonets, Dieter. Come on. One of the Germains came up to stand next before him. Storm Talon glared up in defiance. The pony leveled a weapon at Storm Talon's head. Do you have any final words? The pony asked. Its voice... Do you have any final... No, that's too retarded. Do you have any final words? The pony asked. Its voice...
Do you have any final words?
Do you have any final words?
Yeah.
The pony twitched its hoof. The trigger on its machine and pistol, 1254, was magnetically pulled. A round spat from the barrel and punctured through Storm Talon's skull, shattering it like a melon. He's used like a melon a couple times. I remember it back
A
in the
lot of
Faithful
times.
chapter.
I am not a very creative writer.
Okay.
Or I wasn't.
Maybe you used
All over
like
the battle
melon.
field, such scenes
I do.
were being
I really
repeated.
do. I like
Blood-coated-
watermelons.
Blood-coated the Germains.
booga.
They continued. Indifferent. Now the fucking ponies are indifferent too.
He-
They left nothing alive as they continued their
Spreading.
advance towards Olympus, the
He
Griffin
spreads his
capital.
indifference.
They've
Hundreds
absorbed
of
the
their
edge.
thousands of hooves thundering against the ground. Following them were hundreds of tanks. Overhead, Pegasus air units pumped their wings, closing in on targets for bombing runs. Artillery units spat shells overhead onto distant Griffin positions. Similar events occurred all over the Allied countries. The Germain technology took them by surprise. In Equestria, frightened civilians suddenly found Pegasus bombers demolishing Detroit. There's this one 40k story called The Siege of Detroit, and it's about the death corpse of Krieg, and it's very good. I recommend it entirely. We should read
Oh
that
yeah, I
next.
read that.
The Pegasus were soon followed by artillery, tanks, and foot soldiers. In the massive Soviet Union to the east of Germany, the German units marched hundreds of miles in a day. Hundreds of miles in a day! Killing many. To the west, France found German troops
No,
inside their
see, the spirit of
But
Heinrich Himmler just floated them there. using his supreme
Of
Aryan
course.
magic. You see, he just drew his giant fucking sun and rat on the ground, and it lifted up like a flying saucer and carried them to Moscow.
No,
The
he just
French
called
surrendered within an hour.
Goebbels and he just gave him a bunch of
They
transport
called it
planes.
Goebbels,
Yeah.
and Goebbels like flew them there.
He flew the bit of
He flew them
himself.
there in a
With his,
fucking
with, his
Personally.
Aryan, with his Aryan flying saucers.
No,
Me
obvious that-
1-262s.
that was all the Luftwaffe that lived there.
The French surrendered within hours, finding themselves at the mercy of the German blitzkrieg tactics. By the
Hey,
end of the day, roughly 200,000 Allied soldiers lie dead in the dust of the German advance.
Hey, how you doing, Blizzy?
The Germans had not lost a single. And the world would be his. Flee, Dieter whispered to the figures representing hostile forces on his strategic map. Flee. It will only slow the inevitable. He turned and quietly left the room, his blue eyes glinting like ice in the sun. That is the end of
Oh yeah, you can see this is the point where I started watching anime too.
Alright, you do the next chapter. I'm eating something at the moment.
Okay, I'm gonna do trenches too? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, now I just want to insert Covenor into this.
I mean, we already have a pony version of him in the works, so
Chapter 16 Trenches.
So
Ground
when's the part
shook.
where Stalin comes in and makes friends with somebody? I don't know.
No, Stalin arrives and he saves the Soviet Union. And his leaders knew
Not
Arjan
the
was
Sta-
a
not the
secret.
Sta-
It's not
Stalin
Stalin.
arrived.
Some random
Stalin-
NKVD guy.
Random KVD guy shows up, befriends Dieter, and Nazgul becomes a reality.
No. Obviously, Beria travels to Quest.
Beria shows up, leads the Soviet Union, rapes all the children, leaves.
Chapter 16
Why the children?
Trenches.
I
The
was a
ground
pedophile.
shook as the artificial thunder of shelling continued. The bloodied earth had been softened by days of non-stop rain, and the soft earth made digging easier for the Equestrian Royal Guard. They were entrenching! After weeks of non-stop defeats by the superior German army, German army, the Equestrian High Command had finally decided to dig in and weather out the storm. That's funny because it's fucking raining. That pun is so bad, I want to kill you. Magical barriers were set up over the trench networks in hopes they would ward off the German shells. And blocking units had been set up in the front to distract the Germans. I thought blocking units were set up in the back to stop them from retreating. General Shining Armor. He's no longer Commander Shining Armor. He's General Shining Armor now.
Oh yeah, he's cool
Respect his authority.
Inspired his men. He doesn't have any men. He has ponies.
Stop
No.
it.
By getting
No.
in the
Don't
mud,
misgender them.
with
How dare you?
He
They can
attacked,
be men if they want to.
he attacked the dirt with abandon, steadily digging the trench. Hundreds of miles had already been dug and lined with wood. The perimeter surrounded Ponyville, Cloudsdale, and Canterlot. They were the only 3 cities that hadn't been attacked yet.
Sky
All the
trenches.
others had fallen. Philadelphia was gone. Manhattan was reduced to rubble. That's appropriate for the bourgeoisie in Manhattan. Even Las Pegasus
The
had been
Jews.
conquered in a week. That had been the Equestrian Army's first battle. After constant retreat, the Equestrian Army finally committed to a stand-up fight. The hard fighting had taken thousands of lives and reduced the city to rubble. Shouldn't it be hundreds of thousands of lives? Because they took hundreds of
Millions.
thousands of passions last.
Yeah, look. Once again, I must remind you, I was not thinking at all.
Dig harder, men! Even though they're not men, they're ponies. Shining Armor ordered. They shall not pass. Oh, come on. A weary
Oh,
fear
nay,
broke
pause, nay,
amongst
pause.
the ring as the guards' ponies redoubled their efforts. They had utter confidence in their leader. First mistake. Wait, didn't they see Dieter beat the shit out of him?
No,
First
they've all
mistake.
forgotten.
They've all forgotten that. After
Yeah.
a week of exhaustive work, they were
Their
almost done. The
Their
completion of
collective
the
IQ is about
powering
room
for it.
temperature.
The trench was done in
Not
by time
individually,
the
all
sun
of them
had gone down.
combined.
All
Nice
of
and
them
collective, Dom.
combined. The men settled down to rest, so the unicorns cast defensive shield bubbles. Even though they're not men, the ponies. Dieter chuckled coldly as he heard the news. Trenches had been disastrous in the First World War. Dieter had been trained in officers' school how to deal with them. Officer school, not like
Look,
the
nigger.
equestrians did not know how to go about a war. They believed that if they fought defensively, they could weather the storm. Dieter knew it was an act of desperation, not defiance. Dieter began to frown, however, when he heard of the shield spell that we're using to safeguard the trenches. They could pose a problem. Theoretically, Dieter had been told, the shield could be broken by infiltrators. No spell was perfect. They could be undone. Dieter knew of unicorns able to cloak their presence. However, to cloak themselves and to break the shield spell required a great deal of concentration. Dieter knew that recruitment would take time. He would have to form an elite unit, he supposed. Oh boy, I wonder what this is gonna lead to. An elite unit!
This makes me funk.
In the meantime, probing assaults had to be planned to keep the equestrians' heads down. Dieter looked up to forming a new elite infantry group, the Infiltrators. Eindringligensturmbrigaden. I'm not gonna even try to say
Eindringligensturmbrigaden.
that. Eindringligensturmbrigaden. Okay. That wasn't as hard as I thought it was. Hold on, Shining Armor screamed as the shields began to fall. That was quick. He just set up the thing, and it's already failing. The lines, all across the lines, explosions sounded. There were bright flares of magical energy as shields absorbed the impact. More shells screeched from the Germain positions. Pegasus dived through the air as bomblets dropping their magnetic holsters to strike the ground position. Smaller munitions, such as motors, began to fall between shields. Ponies caught their screams as they were hit by high explosive ammunition. Casualties were low, though. The trenches could be considered a success. For now. The shelling continued for hours, because the catastrophe time well into the night. There would be screaming from some shields flickered and dying. Every time it happened, several more soldiers died. Each time the shields failed, a fresh unicorn would stand up to take his predecessor's place. After a while, the shelling stopped. Engines roared from the Germain lines as their panzers began to close in. Germain infantry quickly followed, using the tanks for cover from the equestrian magic fire. They have magic fire? Okay. The tanks advanced. Machine guns blazing at the equestrian positions. Machine guns, just use your fucking cannon, mate. The bullets ricocheting from their shielding. The shields were only one way. The equestrian unicorns began to blaze away their magic in their desperation. Their desperation fueling the magical barrier. Hissing sounds emanating from the equestrian trenches. Several Germains pitched back and struck by an abnormally powerful magic. Some exploded from the inside. Oh shit! The Germains are finally taking some these are the first casualties the Germains have suffered in the entire story.
The
Holy
very
shit.
first casualties of the war.
Congratulations. The Germains
Congrats, you
pitched
did
back,
it, nigga.
struck by abnormally powerful magic. Some exploded from inside. Others were pulped. There was one whose head burst like a melon, struck by a hammer.
The melon
The
again.
soldier next to him screamed in shock as he was coated in red fluid. There was magic powered by strong emotion, the most potent kind. Several tanks detonated in blossoms of fire and smoke, the crew screaming in agony as they were flash incinerated. The Germans pulled back for the first time in the war. The equestrians had victory. 5 tanks destroyed and roughly 100 and 50 Germains had died. Unacceptable! Who is responsible for this?
Execute the commander.
Firing lines
This-
for everyone.
This went back and forth for months. Casualties mounting on both sides as they entrenched. The Equestrians' assaults were battled back with contemptuous ease, but the German attacks were stopped as well. As the war dragged on into its second year, it seems that the war would last forever. The Germans' assault across multiple sectors rebuffed. The Griffins did not have the same kind of success. In a protracted battle, Olympus fell, the mountain sheared in half by relentless shelling. Nice cow trap. Almost 500,000 Griffles died in the dramatic collapse of the Griffin capital, and the kingdoms were quickly annexed. So wait, if it's called the Griffin Kingdoms, why is there one capital?
Who knows, man?
Why do they call the Griffon? What?
Shut the up.
Iron crosses
Shut
and
the-
the first
the
Reich's
shut-
flags were everywhere to be seen in the Griffin's kingdom.
Shut
And
you
yet
the mouth.
foe was crossed off the list. Sporadic resistance continued, but it was easily crushed. I'm upset that there was no marching through the Tour de Lys like in France. Why was that not a thing? You should have done that.
Should've. Look,
Should've marched
read the
through the city.
Transcendental chapter, and it'll fix a few things.
You really like
Eh,
it, Transcendental chapter.
Not really, but it's 300 times edgier. So
It
Ah.
is edgier this time.
300%.
I can
edgier.
make.
Yes.
Okay, in the meantime, the new elite units, the infiltrator stormtroopers, I'm not going to say the German name, had consisted completely of unicorns with high magical capabilities and focus. They were capable of cloaking and undoing advanced shielding spells. They were trained extensively in counter-trend tactics by the Führer himself.
yes.
200 of these ponies
He also
were
taught
recruited.
them SS magic. So
SS magic. They can
The
pray to
Führer's here.
Hitler now.
they can pray to Hitler. The Fuhrer himself will come down to strike down their foes. Fear them.
Meteor Blitzkrieg.
He did a Hitler card on Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a new card.
Look,
Only
see,
200
they
of these
summon the Fuhrer, and all the Fuhrer has to do.
All the Führer has to do
Dies.
is snap his fingers, and all the Untermensch
He
die.
just snaps his heels together. He snaps his heels together, and every creature on the face of the earth with Jew-like characteristics dies.
Oof.
Only 200 of these ponies were recruited.
Didn't
They
everyone
wore
look
immediately identical uniforms, which were black and had the symbol of the twin lightning bolts, similar on Dieter's original Waffen SS uniform. They reported directly to
Wait. Isn't he worried that Himmler?
What?
Isn't he worried that copyright?
No.
Copyright.
He's part of the. It's
But
cool.
Himmler's not a Jew. You think he's going to copyright the SS
Yeah.
runes?
Yeah.
Nah,
No.
copyright is for kikes.
They reported directly to the Führer, and as a result, often saw them superior to the other fighting forces of the First Reich.
Yeah, he taught them the superior tactics of outrunning your supply lines and losing wars.
That's right.
Patrick
That's
Knott
right. The only
He's
way to
playing Hearts of Iron on vanilla.
crept with the rest of
playing
her
it on
squad
easy mode.
to the equestrian trench line, invisible. They were truly invisible, having used cloaking spells to hide their presence. She could not see her comrades, but she was confident that they could not see her either. She, however, felt them through their telepathic link. Okay, they have telepathic links. And the SS
it's
is
their-
hive mind.
It's their
just the
their
SS
glorious
hive mind.
Aryan magic.
She could feel confidence exuding from their links. They were ready. They had been trained in the tactics by the Führer himself. They could do it.
Yeah,
Do it.
you finally looked at the comments over there in the muted
Okay.
voice chat. The comments are better than the story, unironically.
Squad,
Honestly.
every pony ready. Each responded subconsciously. They were all the affirmative. They were all in affirmative. They began to work on the shield spell, focusing on it and smashing it with their minds. A thickly wrapped shield began to unravel. as
That's
they
not
put
the
more
only thing
focus
that
and
they're
emotion
smashing.
into it.
You are a elite squad of stormtroopers, and you're going to take out this shield by fucking hitting it.
Yes.
They just hit it with their brain powers.
I mean, they are elite.
Hit it with the powers of
Hit it with a
hitting.
hammer.
Quickly wrapped
That'll
shields
always
beginning
happen.
to unravel.
We all
They
know,
poured
we
more
all know
foam
that
and
the
emotion
way
into it.
Hitler
The spell suddenly shattered like glass. Now, Hawkchuck knocked, pulled out one of her grenades, taking cover behind the earthen works. Hawk felt the ground shake as the grenade detonated. There were sudden screams as she and her squad leapt into the trench, firing wildly at the sleeping forms of equestrian soldiers. Blood spurting and painting the walls of the trench red. A coppery stench reached her nostrils. She remained unaffected and indifferent. She was long used to blood. Equestrian soldiers began to wake, and the alarm sounded. Attention! The officer cried and through a loudspeaker. We are under attack! Get to your position! He was cut off by a bullet to the eye, the loudspeakers emanating deafening noise as he screamed. Shining Armor was awoken by gunfire. Scrambling from his position in the trench, he saw black uniformed soldiers, a young corporal screaming as a bullet pierced through his jugular, blood splattering over Shining Armor, kicking his armor. He screamed in anger at the wanton death around him. He charged his horn, and his shot struck one of the soldiers in the chest. The soldier did not react. The spell dissipated around him. Shining Armor reeled in agony as the shot took him in the leg. He stumbled and fell to the ground, his eyes screwed shut in pain. He waited for the shot that would end his life, that would take him from his wife and children. But it never came. He opened his eyes to find one of the soldiers standing over him, aiming at his head with a submachine gun. He tried to move, but he felt himself held down by a strong spell. And he tried to use his magic. The soldier smacked him, causing the spell to dissipate. Just in case he came up with it. The Fuhrer wants to see you, Head General. The soldier said the soldier with a tinge.
The Fuhrer wants to see me.
The scene repeated itself across the equestrian trench system. By morning, the trenches were held by German forces. The artillery had been dragged from the front, the tanks advanced over the trenches, and the trenches were hastily converted to advancement zones. The months of stalemates were over. Over 300,000 equestrians had died in the assault. The Germans had only lost 2.
Oh. Oof.
So now the casualties so far have been 152 soldiers throughout this entire war. And 5 tanks.
No, there was more.
And that was unacceptable losses.
Unacceptable losses.
What did I walk in on?
It was crushing for
the most amazing piece of fiction in your entire life.
Retreating towards Canterlot.
Alright,
spirits were high as the Angel Sturm Brigade hailed as heroes. Victory was within
What's with the spacing on those words? On that line.
And we are on chapter 15, Stalliongrad.
Alright, do you want to do that as well?
Are you still eating?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to read a couple chapters after this because my voice is starting to go.
Yeah, that's the reason why I'm eating.
Okay. I'll do this chapter too.
What story is this?
That's an Equestria.
What?
This is it, Chief. We can go no further as a species.
Oh my god, does somebody want to PM me this?
You can find it in the news channel. It's announced there. Okay, chapter 15, Stalliongrad. While the trench fighting in Equestria had begun, the Germans had marched hundreds of thousands of miles to the Hoovian Union. The Hoovians were in constant retreat as they were pushed back by the determined German forces. The Hoovians soon took on a strategy of scorched earth, burning crops and farmlands as they retreated. The Germans responded by hauling millions of tons of supplies, enough to last 5 years.
What? As you do.
As you do.
German engineering?
German food production. No, see, they've captured Ukraine, so they have all the food they want.
Oh, okay.
Of course. What would be the pony
As the
Ukraine?
advance continued, the Germans found themselves at the last line of defense before Horskow. Stalliongrad. Horskow.
Why?
Stalliongrad was important for several unions. The capture of Stalingrad would give the Germans a clear path to the capital of the Soviet Union. Furthermore, it would give the Germans control of the surrounding fields and oil fields. The Soviets did not have time to burn the former, and they were blissfully unaware of the latter. Not only that, but Stalingrad was an economic and cultural capital of the Soviet Union. It would cause severe backlash if captured. All these reasons made it imperative that the Germans captured this city quickly. You think that Dieter, remembering Stalingrad, would just, go around the city instead of, fighting in Stalingrad, but no.
I do have him specifically remembering Stalingrad, and what he does is even more retarded than what you think he's gonna do.
No, mate. We got to prove that the Germans could have won if they'd just taken Stalingrad and Moscow. No, we just got to prove that.
The Germans could have just won if they didn't use tanks in Stalingrad. If they had just walked into the city.
I find it hilarious.
All they had to do was just say please.
Himmler protects them with his vigorous Aryan magic. Performing blood eagles every other day on Jews in order to summon another Hitler.
Soon he realized much of it would be in ruins. Mitternacht stared, memorizing every detail of the city, so that he could remember it when it had fallen. Noises sounding and explosions sounding.
Stupid.
They were just strapped
Flashes
to their wing.
like stars in the distance. He heard artillery Soviet positions. The distant whirling was almost haunting. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't for the screaming. Screams of terror, screams of death.
Wasn't it beautiful with that?
I don't know. He's not like Peter. He's still too weak.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Machine guns. The scatto bursts were even punctured by explosions as the bombs continued to drop. Mitternacht sighed again. The Fuhrer had decreed that the tanks were not to enter the city. He had stated that the rubble from the artillery would make tank warfare unviable. This was an infantryman's war, an infantrymare's war, whatever. The tanks would be hidden deep within German territory, where the Soviets would be unable to go. Over 3.5 million German soldiers would be deployed to take the city.
What?
It was
Of course.
Of course.
Wasn't Germany
Of course.
Germany just a town, like a city? How big is this city?
Wave tactics.
No.
It's concentration of force. This is actually their entire army. The equestrians haven't noticed they would put up dummies.
We just put
No, they just use that clone. They just use that mirror pool technique.
Oh yeah, they have a free force. They capture.
just mirror pool.
My question would be, why wouldn't
Wow,
they
you're putting
force
more
them
thought
to
into
the
this than
people
I
that
did.
They already have in their
It was
I'm so happy,
overkill in
guys.
the truest sense of the word. It was rumored that even 50 of the elite Storm Brigade ponies, whose name I don't feel like pronouncing, had been deployed.
Eintelinger Sturmbataillon. You don't need to.
Eintelinger Sturmbrigaden.
Wait, so he sent 3 million troops.
And then 50 of his Waffen-SS.
Yeah.
Something crowd.
Something.
Wait, so they're the only ones to have tanks. So why are they scared of the Soviets? They don't have tanks, do they?
Well, it's because the city will be rubble if they send the tank. Tanks are bad in urban combat.
Just make them fly. They have magic. Just make them fly.
It's a fucking tank, nigga.
Who cares?
Hey,
magic.
you gotta-
It's My Little
you gotta
Pony.
make people- You gotta believe.
Should have used Himmler Force to fucking airdrop the tanks on top of buildings.
I like how.
Yes.
Okay, so I like how they think they've deployed the Waffen-SS, and the Waffen-SS doesn't even bother to tell anyone they're there. They're like, no. Maybe the Waffen-SS is here. Maybe they're not.
The real question is, did they
Nah, their own
actually
forces
develop
don't even know they're there,
aircraft, or
nor
did
the
they-
enemy.
They have no aircraft, but they have tanks, apparently.
Hey, if we don't know what we're doing, the enemy won't either.
City is a pretty bad idea.
I mean,
Well, they have screaming
Peter is obviously a
ponies
Hoi
being
4 player. He
stupidos.
knows it's better to build tanks than planes.
Yeah, man, everyone knows that when you capitulate the last victory points, they just auto-capitulate. It's
Yeah.
just how it works.
Yeah,
That's
man.
right.
Mitternacht pulled
That's
out
how
his
it works.
combiner and leapt from the tank hall with the
Every
rest of the
human being has an inbuilt morale ticker that counts down every time a city falls.
crew. all the German soldiers,
every living being.
All German soldiers were trained for multiple scenarios, giving them versatility that most nations lacked. While Mittersnack was technically a tank commander, he doubled as an infantry squad leader. Like all officers, he was a unicorn. I like how he set up a unicorn ethos state, by the way. This is just, I've noticed this.
Oof.
Yeah.
Here, let me just make all my soldiers great at everything. That totally won't backfire because nobody won't be perfect at something.
Specialization is for losers.
Several more squads joined them, and they began to advance into the city. Mitternack truly envied those who rode in the personnel carriers. They didn't feel as tired as he did, he imagined. So wait, he bans tanks from entering the city, but like APCs are still.
Well, I don't know AP. We're probably just half tracks.
Yeah, but
that's fine.
They entered the city. The hundreds of spear-wielding Huviots charged them. These fuckers are still using spears. You think they would have come up with something by now? Like,
Literally the
pulled the trigger of his
Wait,
gun.
they might be the spears from like Infinity War where they shoot like a
The fucking Infinity War. They're fighting the Germans with fucking laser guns.
Still no casualties.
Still no casualties.
One of them has like a glove, just snaps the fingers. Like, instead of the Germans dying, it's all of the troops.
Stalin just
Zelensky, I don't feel so well.
Stalin just has
German machine gunners
Infinity
set up an
Gauntlet.
intersection, hosing Huviot conscripts with their merciless fire before they could come into range. As a nation set up by the working class, the Huviot Union consisted mostly of earth ponies. This, of course, meant that the Germans did not have to worry about ranged fire coming from Huviot positions. Spears did pitiful damage to tanks and guns. They had, however, an advantage in numbers. They fought a war of attrition, burning everything they could have been of value, and swarming German positions with zealous abandon. They intended to drown them in a tide of flesh. It doesn't really work when your enemy has, machine guns.
Hang on a second. This is really confusing. Why don't they bring the tanks in? Because they've
Because
only
it's a
got
city.
spears. What the fuck are they? Yeah, I know, but they've got spears.
Don't you know?
There's rubble.
There's
rubble,
because they're going to
guys.
shell the city and put rubble everywhere so they can't send their tanks in. Because
Yeah,
I don't know,
man.
the Germans are stupid.
Whoa.
If they
Of
don't
course,
shell
yeah.
the city, they could just walk in.
Yeah, I mean, this is really.
I mean, it
confusing.
makes
Before
total
machine
plot
gunfire
sense.
sounded, limbs were amputated by the sheer weight of ammunition expended. Blood spurted and weird patters against the wall and ground. Shells screamed over hell, and Mitternacht saw a group of Hovia's Union soldiers blown apart by a motor. They screamed as their organs were blown out. Mitternacht saw one beheaded by a stray piece of shrapnel. Man, all the shrapnels, there's a lot of fucking beheading in this story.
This can
Buildings collapsed
I thought
all
this was
around.
going to be
I wonder if he
PG-13.
has a fetish.
Mitternacht saw a burning soldier running from an inferno of a destroyed building. How does that work? What the fuck set him on fire? These guys don't even have guns or like.
Molotov cocktail kommer.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Do-do-do,
By the end of the day,
do-do-do.
half of the city was under German control. Holy shit! Only half of the city? Amazing! The Germans weren't able to take it in a single day.
It was just too lazy. It was a work day. They were taking a day off.
Broke out.
Look, man, it was Sunday. They had to be secure.
They had to salute the Fuhrer on Sunday.
Nah, they just needed the
Mom
bread.
made them come over for dinner.
By the end of the day, half the city was under German control. Sporadic gunfire sounded as small skirmishes broke out between the opposing forces. Huvia units had begun to ford the Holga River, while which ran through the middle of the city. They were beaten back constantly by German artillery and Pegasus units. The Germans began to bring up their own amphibious units and transports that could go on land and in water. The amphibians would engage Huviot ships, hosing them down with merciless fire. Screams could be heard constantly as the river turned red with blood for several weeks. Wow, the entire fucking river turned red with blood. That's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of damage.
This story is my pride
and
glory.
I can tell.
I bit my lip. Fuck.
So they're having skirmishes.
this
Skirmishes.
is
So
the
why
height
are
of
they
my
fighting each other with? Why isn't the Germans just winning every skirmish because they have sticks and stones and they have machine guns? Why is there even skirmishing?
Shut you the mouth. Okay, they were using stellinium rocks.
Oh, God.
Very strong comrade.
Yes,
Rohit
comrade.
Kurzfall crept through the streets of Stalingrad with the rest of his Eintrichsturmbrigade squad. They were fully cloaked by their magic. German intelligence had found that the Soviet High Command had set up a base in one of the grain mills that dotted Stalingrad. The Waffen SS ponies had been dispatched to terminate them. Rig probed his psychic connection with his squad mates. Good. They were all in position. 2 guards were stationed at the front of the mill. That was a dead giveaway. Rurik mentally gave the command. 2 jets of blood suddenly appeared as the guards' throats were opened. If Rurik hadn't known that his squad mates were cloaked, it would have seemed miraculous, as if willed by the Fuhrer himself.
Himmler had
The
just
Fuhrer?
teleported behind them.
By the Fuhrer himself.
One moment the guards were alive, then the next they were dead. He crept up to the window and heard the sounds of merriment inside. Wow, the fucking high command's partying while the battle's going on.
They're just getting
They're
drunk from that.
binging vodka.
He stared in. Uniform certainly did designate them as the general staff. He nodded. Go loud, he thought to his squad. The door was kicked in, the sound of jarring all the officers in silence. Grenades were hurled into the room, form cover.
I didn't know
The
this was Call of
officers stared
Duty.
at the potato masher-shaped explosive with mute interest. They'd never seen them before. You think they would know what grenades are, by now?
By this
No, you see,
point,
they're
yeah.
Slavs.
They're Slavs. They think they're actual potatoes. These were not combat officers. There was an explosion and shrapnel embedded itself all over the room. He heard screaming from inside the walls, blown apart by the force of the blast. Now was the time. Alright, I'm going to apologize in advance for this. For the fatherland, Rurik screamed! For the Fuhrer, his squad returned!
I got my volume down in time.
The Fuhrer?
I have headphones. It's great. I love it.
They swept into the room.
Good
Silent
thing no one heard
submachine
that from
guns
him,
belching fired. Everything in the room. Wait, so go loud, but their submachine guns are silent. Huh. Everything in the room was already dead. They hosed it down
just
anyway.
screaming
Nice
when they're
use of
shooting.
ammunition, guys.
Good old
Shredded
Dollar
corpses
SS
until
wasting
there was
ammunition.
no doubt that they were dead. They continued up the stairs, hosing down the rooms as they passed, continuing to check for casualties. Blood painted the wood-colored walls. Some